Now we will have an opportunity of listening to a witness from the profession and vocation that is not frequent here at the Youth Festival, and that's politics. Tonight, Peter Weiss was speaking to us. He is the member of the German Parliament, a member of the World Church Association, and its main speaker. He is married, he has 3 children, and he lives in Freiburg. He will speak to us as a believer, a Catholic, who is involved in politics. Mr. Weiss, you are welcome.
Salz der Erde, Licht der Welt sollen wir sein.
Sol zemlje I svjetlo svijeta treba.
The salt of the world and the light of the earth. That is what we need to be. Dear brothers and sisters, sirs and madams, in order to be able to accept these assignments that are given by our Lord,
To se može ne samo unutar crkve u kojoj se sastajemo u svojim.
it is possible not only inside the church, in the communities that we gather.
To je zadatak koji se ne
This is an assignment that is not realized only when we are in some beautiful place like this.
Muss man ernst nehmen, indem man sich als Christ auch bewusst in Gesellschaft und Politik engagiert.
taj zadatak.
That assignment we need to undertake, even when completely consciously, as Christians, we become involved in community and politics.
Neben der gesellschaftlichen Tätigkeit aufstellen,
Ne smije se stvarati nikakvo umjetna suprotnost između.
It is not a matter of having some kind of artificial opposition between the community activities on the one side and the religious life on the other.
das hat uns zum Beispiel auch nochmal in aller Deutlichkeit das Zweite Vatikanische Konzil aufgeschrieben.
To nam je na sasvim jasan način pokazalo.
This was shown to us in a clear way by the Second Vatican Council.
Aus religiösem, beruflichem, gesellschaftlichem Leben war und ist für mich Motivation, mich sowohl als Christ in der Politik zu engagieren, wie auch als Politiker mich in meiner Kirche zu engagieren.
Dakle, to jedinstvo između.
Thus, this unity between religious, social, and professional life inspires me to become involved not only as a politician within the church, but also as a Christian in politics.
Viele Menschen stellen trotzdem die Frage, ob Christen in der Politik ihrer Länder und Völker überhaupt etwas erreichen können.
Mnogi ljudi postavljaju
Many people pose the question whether Christians in politics of the countries can accomplish anything at all.
Ich will das an der Erfahrung meiner eigenen Familie und der Region, aus der ich komme, verdeutlichen.
Želio bih to pokazati na
I
primjeru
would like to show this in the example of my own family and the part of the country from which I come.
Ich komme aus einer Gegend Deutschlands, die unmittelbar an Frankreich angrenzt.
dolazim iz onog dijela
I come from the part of Germany that borders with France.
Dass die Franzosen, also unsere Nachbarn, die Erbfeinde Deutschlands sind.
Moji roditelji su u školi naučili
My parents in school learned that our neighbors, French, who live very close to us, are the old enemies of Germany.
Dass es einen natürlichen Gegensatz zwischen den beiden Völkern gäbe, der nicht auszurotten ist.
Dakle, moji roditelji, kao i njih,
Thus my parents and their parents grandfathers learned in school that there is an original enmity between the two nations that cannot be uprooted.
Alle vorangegangenen Generationen haben erlebt, dass sie mindestens einmal, wenn nicht zweimal in ihrem Leben einen Krieg an dieser Grenze zwischen Deutschland und Frankreich mitmachen mussten.
Moji roditelji,
My parents, grandparents, great grandparents, and all the generations before them had the experience that at least once, if not twice, in every generation, there is a war between the French and the Germans at that border.
Unsere Region, der Grenzfluss zwischen Deutschland und Frankreich, ist durchschwommen und wurde auf der anderen Rheinseite von den Franzosen wegen illegalen Grenzübertretens verhaftet.
moja majka je preplivala Rajnu.
My mother, as a young woman, prepared her dowry. And on the other side, she was arrested by the French because of illegal entry. What is it now, today?
Ist die längste Zeit des Friedens, die die Menschen in meiner Heimat je erleben konnten.
Od 1945. do danas.
From 1945 to today is the longest period of peace that the people in this region have lived through.
Frankreich und Deutschland gibt es nur noch auf dem Papier. Es gibt keine Grenzkontrollen mehr. Es wird niemand verhaftet, niemand aufgehalten.
Granica između Francuske i
The border between France and Germany exists only on paper. There is no border control, no one is arrested.
mladi ljudi danas
The young people today cannot even remember that there was ever a border between the two countries.
Der politischen Situation beigetragen.
što se je u nekoliko desetljeća dogodilo
And in a few decades, what has happened that such a great change took place in the political situation?
Dass die Menschen in Europa und die verantwortlichen Politiker eine Lehre gezogen haben aus der Katastrophe des Zweiten Weltkrieges.
to je zato što su ljudi u Evropi
That is because people in Europe have taken the teaching from the catastrophe of the Second World War. The Second World War initiated in Germany. And has thrown the entire world and Europe into a huge catastrophe.
Die Würde des Menschen geleugnet haben.
taj su rat vodili vođe koji
That war was led by the leaders who negated all human rights and all human dignity.
Christliche Politiker, die gesagt haben, nie wieder Krieg.
nakon drugog svjetskog rata
And after the Second World War, there were Christian politicians who cried out, "Never war again."
Christliche Politiker wie Konrad Adenauer in Deutschland, Alcide de Gasperi in Italien und Robert Schuman in Frankreich vorangetrieben haben.
ideja europskog
The idea of the European Union is the idea that was inspired and carried forth by Christians like Konrad Adenauer in Germany, Gasperi in Italy, and Schuman in France.
Um die europäische Einigung überhaupt voranzubringen, war es notwendig, dass die beiden Erbfeinde, die Deutschen und die Franzosen, zueinander finden.
da bi uopće došlo do europskog sjedinjenja
To come to the European Union, it was first necessary for the two original enemies, French and Germans, come to reconcile with each other.
Die Deutschen und die Franzosen haben einen wichtigen Freundschaftsvertrag miteinander geschlossen.
Francuzi i Njemci su
The French and the Germans had entered into a very important agreement of friendship.
Sich die beiden Staatsführer in einer Kirche getroffen.
kada su počeli pregovori
When the negotiations began, these two Christian leaders first met in the church.
Früher die französischen Könige gekrönt wurden, haben sich der französische Staatspräsident Charles de Gaulle und der deutsche Bundeskanzler Konrad Adenauer zu einem Versöhnungsgottesdienst versammelt.
U katedrali u Rensu
In the cathedral in Reims, where the French kings were crowned, the French President Jean de Gaulle and the German President Bundeskanzler Adenauer met. There they were at a service of reconciliation. They gave each other a hand in church before the face of God. They showed that the old enmity was over. And that as of now on, the French and the Germans would build the united Europe. The reconciliation between nations, freedom, peace and freedom are the foundations of the European Union that were moved forth by Christian politicians, people in Middle and Eastern Europe had yet another experience.
i oni su doživjeli nakon Drugog svjetskog rata
Also experienced, after the Second World War, a regime of peace, so to call it. That was the Soviet peace. But that was not a peace in freedom. That was freedom in a lack of freedom. Peace in lack of freedom. That was not a peace that was founded on reconciliation among nations.
An der Anerkennung der Würde des Menschen orientierte.
i to nije bio mir koji je brinuo za
It was not a peace that was concerned about the dignity and the acknowledgement of the human being. And the result? That Soviet peace fell apart.
ideja europskog sjedinjenja
The idea of the European Union in peace and freedom that was set out by Christian politicians that continues to fascinate and draw.
In diesen europäischen Einigungsprozess aufzunehmen, war es notwendig, auch mit ihnen den Weg der Versöhnung zu gehen.
da bi se narode iz srednje i istočne Europe mogli
For the people in Eastern Central Europe to be included into this process, they had to come through the process of reconciliation.
napose je važno
That was especially important in the relationship between Germany and Poland.
gdje je bio postavljen temelj
Where was the foundation of German-Polish understanding that was placed?
to je bilo na Drugom Vatikanskom
That was at the Second Vatican Council in Rome.
Und dem polnischen katholischen Bischöfe begegnet.
tamo su se susreli njemački i poljski katolički biskup
There, German and Polish Catholic bishops met.
Sich miteinander verständigt.
oni su se dopisivali međusobno su razmijenili
They exchanged letters
Dass sich die europäische Idee, die europäische Einigungsidee auch in Ost- und Mitteleuropa ausbreiten konnte.
to su bila pisma promirenja
They were letters of reconciliation that were the foundation of European Union to spread towards Eastern and Central Europe.
Das es je in der Menschheitsgeschichte gegeben hat.
Europska unija
European Union is the greatest project of peace that has ever existed in the history of mankind.
Das begründet worden ist von Politikerinnen und Politikern, die bewusst
It is the project
den Versöhnungsprozess zwischen ihren Völkern und den europäischen Einigungsprozess angestoßen haben.
to je proces kojeg su pokrenuli kršćanski
a process that was moved by the Christian politicians completely aware out of Christian motivations.
draga braćo i sestre
Dear brothers and sisters, most honored ladies and gentlemen,
Viele Länder dieser Welt in einem hohen Maß erschüttert durch die Auswirkungen der internationalen Finanz- und Kapitalmarktkrise.
U današnje vrijeme
In
mnogo
today's time, many countries in the world are gravely shaken because of the consequences of the financial crisis and capital. Millions of people are afraid for their workplaces.
Die Frage an uns ist, haben wir als Christen dazu etwas zu sagen?
pitanje koje nam se
The
postavlja
question that is posed to us is the following. We as Christians, do we have anything to say in this?
In der Lehre der alten Kirchenväter findet sich die Idee der 4 Kardinaltugenden.
u nauci starih
In the teaching of the Church Fathers,
4 glavnih vrijednosti.
4 principal virtues are written about: justice, courage, clarity, and temperance. These are the boundaries that need to lead our lives.
So etwas wie diese internationale Finanz- und Kapitalmarktkrise angesichts dieser 4 Kardinaltugenden, die wir Christen unserem Leben voranstellen, geschehen.
Kako je moglo doći?
How is it possible to come to such a financial crisis when we, the Christians, should follow these 4 principal virtues? These virtues were simply falsely and wrongly translated into modern languages.
Dass man besonders risikofreudig sein muss.
Hrabrost za neke znači
Courage for some means that we should take no warning about going into risks. To be reasonable means to be just clear of thought.
Die Idee des Geizes.
Temperance has been turned around and has become greed. And justice, man wants to be just, first of all and only to himself, but not to others.
Dass die 4 Kardinaltugenden wieder richtig und nicht falsch übersetzt werden.
kada bi nama kršćanima
When we Christians would succeed in our own countries to have these 4 principal virtues translated in the right way, not in the wrong way, then our world would look differently.
Wichtig, dass sich Christen ganz bewusst für ihre Ideen auch in der Wirtschaft, auch in den Führungsetagen unserer großen internationalen Unternehmen, auch in den Führungsetagen unserer Banken engagieren.
i zato je važno i potrebno da
That's what is necessary and important, that Christians become involved at the level of power, the level of international companies, at the top of all of these places where decisions are made.
Politik und Kirchen findet oftmals in folgender Form statt.
susret između politike i crkve često
The meeting between politics and the church oftentimes takes place in the following way.
Etwas.
crkve, odnosno naposled kroz svoje
The church, especially through its representatives, proclaims something.
Politiker, die Führer in Wirtschaft und Gesellschaft.
onda od političara, od društvenih
And then from the politicians and from societal leaders, it demands something.
So wie das Papst Benedikt XVI. In seiner jüngsten Sozialenzyklika zum Beispiel getan hat.
kao što je učinio Papa Pavao XVI. u svojoj
Like Pope Pius Pope Pius had done in his encyclical. But politics are led by concrete people, men and women.
Die Frage ist nicht, ob die Politik auf den Anruf christlicher Forderungen reagiert,
I nije pitanje u tome hoće
And
li
the question is not in that whether politics will react to the aspects of religion, whether the question is whether concrete people who bear responsibility will react. That is why in politics, economics, and in society,
in Führungsfunktionen
na vodećim
unserer
funkcijama
Länder
naših zemalja
we need to have the leaders of our country to be truly devout and active Christians, not those who will only write what should be done, but concrete men and women
wie Politik, Wirtschaft und Gesellschaft.
koji će kršćanske teze, odnosno
who will truly put into practice the religious requirements to economics and society.
Jungen Männer und Frauen, die heute hier sind, wenn
želio bih se obratiti
I would like to now turn to the young men and women who are here today.
für viele ist vielleicht das politische Engagement angesichts dessen, dass man sich mit den persönlichen Lebensverhältnissen zunächst mal organisieren muss, noch weit entfernt.
za mnoge od vas
For many of you, as far as your concrete life situation and involvement in politics is concerned, it's still far from you.
Von der Politik fernhalten.
kada bi se
But if everyone would stay away from politics, then democracy would no longer function.
demokracija znači
Democracy means to become involved.
Und deshalb rufe ich Sie alle auf,
zato vas sve pozivam
That is why I invite you all. Become involved. Be good Democrats who you make use of democracy. The more involved Christians become active, the more Christians that are real Democrats with real democracy, the greater chance we have for Christians to do something in politics, economics, and in the society of their countries.
Licht der Welt sind wir nicht, indem wir nebenan stehen.
sol zemlje i svjetlo
The salt of the world and the light of the earth. We cannot be if we stand beside somewhere and look at what others are doing.
Salz der Erde, Licht der Welt sind wir nur, wenn wir uns mittendrin einmischen.
sol zemlje i svjetlo
The salt of the earth, light of the world. We are only then when we really become involved and we become right in the middle of everything.
Dass das auch bedeutet, dass man in sehr konfliktträchtige Situationen kommen kann.
ne želim prešutiti. To znači da će čovjek ući u mnoge konfliktne situacije.
To want to just let things go means that we will not get involved in certain conflict. But the greater your trust in God, the more you will be able to overcome conflict. And
Dass man Kompromisse eingehen muss, um Mehrheiten zu finden.
U demokraciju spada i to da treba praviti
in democracy, it's also important that there has to be compromise to come to the majority.
In der Demokratie nicht etwas Schlechtes,
kompromis kojeg treba praviti.
The compromise that we need to make with others in democracy is not something bad.
ist für eine Demokratie lebensnotwendig.
Kompromis je za demokraciju
Compromise for democracy is of life's importance. And in compromise, in good part, it is important to also dispose oneself to what others think. That doesn't mean that the person needs to renounce his own conviction.
većina
But we know that the majority is only possible only
Eingestellt ist, dass man nicht alle seine Überzeugungen zu 100% umsetzen kann.
kada se čovjek pomiri s
when a person reconciles with the fact that he cannot realize 100% all of his convictions.
Kao kršćanin
As a Christian, to become involved in politics is not easy.
Man muss für seine eigene Überzeugung kämpfen.
moramo se boriti za svoja
We must fight for our convictions. But on the other side, we must be ready for compromise.
Wir haben für diese Welt einen großartigen Schatz.
Ali ja vjerujem da mi ovom svijetu možemo
But
ponuditi
I believe that we can offer a majestic treasure to this world because it is us Christians are the ones who can offer to this world.
Den die Menschen, die religiös sind, für diese Welt erschließen können.
rekao bih čak da svi
I would even say that all the people who are religious can offer that treasure to the world.
Diese Welt ruft nach Versöhnung.
ovaj svijet zove
This world calls to reconciliation.
Europäische Einigung zeigt uns, Versöhnung wird zuerst, ja geradezu förderst von Christinnen und Christen, von religiös motivierten Menschen angestoßen.
Europska unija nam
The
pokazuje
European Union shows us that reconciliation takes place in the first place, particularly through Christians who are motivated.
katastrofe ovoga svijeta
The catastrophes of this world, like war and hunger,
i ovo što sad doživljavamo
and this what we now experience, this crisis of the financial capital,
Kann nur begegnet werden, wenn wir unser Handeln persönlich, beruflich, gesellschaftlich, wirtschaftlich und politisch zuallererst an einem ausrichten.
ove krize, s ovim krizima se možemo susresti
through this crisis we can encounter
političko, ekonomsko, društveno,
and we can overcome only if our political, social, and cultural functions we put to the one use, and that is one is human dignity.
najveći argument za to
And the greatest argument for that human dignity is in that man is created in God's image.
je čovjeka stvorio
God created man in his own likeness and image.
Zuallererst auf die Würde des Menschen ausgerichtet.
i upravo zato je svaki
Particularly because of this, every Christian politics in the first place are directed towards human dignity. I'm convinced that the world, that our people, that our countries
Diesen Schatz, den wir mit uns tragen, dringend brauchen.
doista hitno trebaju to blago koje
urgently need that treasure that we carry within us.
kršćani i kršćanke mi
As Christians,
Anderen nicht vorenthalten.
ne bismo ga smjeli
we must not keep that treasure for ourselves. We need to give it to others. And therefore,
Seien wir Salz der Erde, Licht der Welt, indem wir
sol zemlje i svjetlost
the salt of the world and the light of the earth
Wirtschaft und Gesellschaft engagieren.
time što se angažiramo i u politici
is in that we become involved in politics, in society, and economics.
Zahvaljujemo gospodinu
We thank Mr. Weiss, who has spoken to us about virtues as a theologian and has shown us how we can be successful as a Christian and politician.
ušima ove riječi njegovog
I believe that the words are remaining in our ears that all concrete men and women try to do to have Christian values in Europe, in the world, in life, and that they get involved in politics. We thank him once again